And we are live. This is the 100 Club. I'm Tom, and that's Rich. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good. How are you doing, Tom? This fine Thursday afternoon.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm missing cricket because today is clearly another day in the cricket calendar. There is one day going on, but it's the first day without the 100 that we've had since the 21st of July.
Yeah, no, it does feel a bit of a 100-sized hole in the calendar this afternoon, being somewhat filled by the Royal London Cup final as we speak. Durham taking on Glamorgan, but no, we're here to talk about the 100, the last round of group games and the Eliminator and final to come.
Absolutely. So we've got a few things on the agenda today, but if you're new to the channel and you're joining us for the first time, great. We love having you here. Thank you very much. So these live shows really are a chance for us to chat cricket. So if you've got any comments, stick them down below and we'll have a chat about it. But we've got plenty to get on with. And I can already see AEW for life in there. Hello. Hi. How you doing? I suppose what we should do first really is look forward a touch, because we've got the whole weekend of eliminators and finals. Hi, Rohit. How you doing? Welcome in. So let's have a look at the tables as they stand at the end of the group stages. Looking at the men's competition so far, what do you make of it?
So the Southern Brave were widely tipped at the start of the tournament to do well. They lost their first two games, but since then they've been one of the form teams, winning 5 on the bounce. They did have one rained out to qualify, and they won that crucial eliminator on Tuesday night, I think it was. Monday night, where they edged out the Oval Invincibles for that final spot. The Rockets started off really well with 3 wins. Since then, they've been a little bit inconsistent. They secured their place in the top 3 with a good result against the Originals on Sunday night, chasing down 130 odd, relatively comfortably. But I think the team we're all most excited about at the minute, the Phoenix, who are on an absolute tear. They won 5 in a row. They're playing a very exciting brand of cricket. Smashing it to all parts, and they put themselves direct in the final, and they're going to take some stopping on Saturday.
They are. When I'm watching any sport, any table, I think form is one of the most important factors. And you see that row of green W's there for the Birmingham Phoenix, 5 wins in a row. You've got to think that's ominous for whoever gets through out of the Southern Brave and the Trent Rockets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the interesting thing about the Phoenix is Milne missed one of those games. Adam Milne, the pace bowler, he's sort of their principal weapon, both in the power play and at the death. But they also have Benny Howe, very canny player, and they're also ably supported by the likes of Pat Brown, Mo Egan's off spin when he's back in the team. Whereas when you think more about the Brave, you think more about their bowling attack, right? That's got them this far. Chris Jordan, Tamar Mills bowling at the back end. Jake Lintop's been a revelation. George Garton's bowled very well as well. And that's sort of their method, isn't it? Is to really squeeze the opposition and then just be clinical with the bat.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have a chat through some of these games that have got us to this point, and then have a look at the eliminators in detail. But that's the situation as it stands right now in the men's comp. Hi, Shai. Hi, welcome. Let's have a look at the women's table as well, though, whilst we're here, and just have a quick sort of survey of the situation that side. So we can see it there. Southern Brave absolutely smashed it. Net run rate of over 1. That's pretty impressive.
Very impressive. Best team in the tournament. Had that sort of one odd loss to the Originals, but other than that, have been pretty dominant throughout. I mean, out of those 7 wins, I don't remember many of them being particularly close games either. So definitely the team to beat. Should be a good game tomorrow. The Invincibles have sort of been reasonable throughout. The Phoenix are the ones to watch. They'd lost 4 out of their first 5 games. But 3 wins at the back end has got them in, edging just ahead of the London Spirit there on net run rate.
Yeah, and I think AEW for Life has kind of summed it up there when he asks who's going to win that qualifier. Right, because I don't know, but I guess we should make an attempt to put some analysis into it. Van Niekerk, absolutely power hitter. I think she's currently the women's MVP on the stats charts for the entire tournament. So absolutely having a great one. Capsy, hard hitting, absolutely. I would put Marizanne Kapp into that column as well, although perhaps she hasn't shown quite the batting form that we might have thought after that first game, where she had such a great partnership with her wife, Van Niekerk.
I think that sums it up really, in terms of at the beginning of the tournament, we said that the Invincibles would be quite reliant on Van Niekerk, and to their joy, she's delivered. I think she's currently rated as the MVP, and Capsey's been a revelation as well. They have relied on those two batters. I think that Georgia Adams has had a couple of decent knocks in the last few games, and those 2 games they won. But it's the return of Shabnim Ismail, bowling quick at the top, along with Tash Farrett's bowled very well as too. Capsey's looked good with the ball, and of course, Van Niekerk herself's a very capable bowler. And their method has very much been to restrict other teams to modest totals and try and chase them down, because they've had some difficulties chasing kind of even relatively modest scores. So they're very much dependent on their bowling and then a couple of batters coming off for them. Whereas the Brave just seem to, the Brave were in the final, but in terms of the Phoenix, they seem to have more going for them in terms of the batting. You've got Amy Jones, you've got Eve Jones, you've got Erin Burns, Katie Max scored runs at points. They won't have Verma tomorrow. She's left the tournament now, so that leaves a little bit of a gap. But I do think the Phoenix have places to hurt you, and if they can put runs on the board, you've got a very good spin attack with Kirsty Gordon and Maksud.
Maksud. Yeah. So I would say for me, the Birmingham Phoenix women's team is a bit better balanced, but probably if they have their day, the Oval Invincibles I think can probably do it. And so it's whether they show up tomorrow for me, the Oval Invincibles. If they have a nervy day, then they might just get beaten, because they, on the first game, remember, that was a huge game, a huge spectacle, and they showed absolute nerves of steel to win that game. So I'd probably just edge towards Oval Invincibles tomorrow for me.
I think I'm going to go the opposite way. I think the Phoenix have got a bit of momentum. I think they've got the better batting. I'm going to go Phoenix.
Happy with that. We don't have to agree, and neither do you. So if you're new to the channel, thanks for joining us today. It's great. Hit a like, hit a subscribe. That's all good. And stick some comments down below, and we'll try and put them up on screen. So we should also talk about the men's eliminator as well. Clearly, Southern Brave also involved there alongside the Trent Rockets. And they're going to be facing, as we said, a pretty strong-looking Birmingham Phoenix. But in terms of form-wise, you've got to favour the Southern Brave over the Trent Rockets, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously they're bringing in that form, and they've come up off a must-win game, which was essentially a quarter-final against the Invincibles the other day. The Rockets are a funny one. I mean, when they've won very comfortably. You think back to that initial win against the Brave in their opener. Also, their win against the Originals the other night was very comfortable. They managed to defend a very modest total against the London Spirit. Yet when they've looked bad, they've kind of looked really bad. So difficult to say on that one. But Brave, I mean, I think we both agree the Brave are clear favourites for this one.
They are, but I'm going to put my money on the Trent Rockets. Don't know why. Not that I've got any money, but there you go. I think they've learnt more than other teams through the tournament. So I think they've got that match mentality that might just see them over a really tight game tomorrow. We'll be there, so we'll see it. We've got some questions coming in, so let's have a go. Shai, hi, how you doing? Birmingham Phoenix, mix of local and England players. So if you are fans of the channel, you might want to keep an eye out tomorrow, because we've just come off a great chat with Chris Benjamin, who, if you know his story, he's probably one of the stories of the 100, in that 2 months ago, he was not a professional cricketer. He's come in from Warwickshire Seconds, had a first-class debut in T20, scored 60, and then has been taken into the 100 setup with the Birmingham Phoenix, and then got 2 Hero of the Match awards and smashed it. He's an example of exactly what Shai is talking about here, right?
Absolutely. And if you want to go back into our videos, if you're just joining us now, before the tournament, we spoke to Dan Weston, who's the lead analyst at the Birmingham Phoenix, about how they put their squad together. And this isn't by accident that they have good local and England players. They've thought quite deeply about who they bring in. They don't like to go for sort of overrated veterans. They look for youngsters with upside. And they're also thinking very much about this being a multi-year squad. They're not just thinking about this season. They're thinking about bringing players in who are going to be good for 4 or 5 years and be a nucleus of a side for that period. So that's definitely been their strategy. You can see that in the draft. They didn't go overseas early. They prioritized the likes of Liam Livingston. That's really paid off for them. So I completely agree with that comment. I think I wouldn't say it's necessarily in the finals, but they have definitely made that their strategy, and it's paid off for them.
Yeah, and I mean, if Shai follows it up with just some of the other stars of the tournament who fit that trend, building youth and getting some really impressive young players absolutely doing the business. And the wild card has kind of proved itself in that sense, hasn't it? I mean, you look at someone like Jake Lintott, as mentioned there, a wild card pick who is really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, this gets back into the debate around the 100 a little bit, in that these guys were doing well in the T20 Blast, the kind of the county T20 competition, which isn't on main TV over here. Some of it's on YouTube, some of it's on Sky Sports, but it's not as prominently featured as the 100. So guys like Jake Lintott, the cricket badgers would have known about him, but maybe the wider general public wouldn't have done. And you wouldn't have seen him performing that well against really high quality batters. So I think these guys are all very much in the conversation for the England T20 squad, especially Lintott, because he just brings that sort of something different, doesn't it, in terms of his left arm leg spin. And I think he's got a CPL contract off the back.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, and absolutely. There's a few players I think are going to be heading over there. It'll be interesting to see whether they can keep that form up, because once you get into this franchise cricket game, you can go pretty much tournament to tournament, and you can make a hell of a living out of it, right?
Yeah, not bad living at all. I mean, it's a young man's game, but you can go from Australia to if you're good enough, go to the IPL. I mean, other
Sri Lanka,
PSL,
whatever.
Sri Lanka, the PSL, the CPL, the Big Bash. There's all, and obviously the T20 and the 100 over here. So yeah, agree.
Let's have a question here from Rohit Chand. The last time the two teams met in the 100, it was the Rockets, and this is the Rockets versus the Brave game. Absolutely, did the business on the Brave, winning by 9 wickets, if you remember that game. But the point here is the crunch game, the chasing team should be able to win. And I think that's an interesting comment, because to what extent do you think the toss will have a say tomorrow? You've been to the Oval more recently than I have. What's that pitch going to be looking like? What's the chasing team going to have in terms of an advantage?
So I'll do it in two parts. I mean, the first part was an interesting one in terms of the 9-wicket win, because I remember going into that game very clearly thinking this is the first game at Trent Bridge. If anybody's going to get a massive score, Trent Bridge lends itself to it. And then being really surprised by the fact that the Trent Rockets restricted the Southern Braves, who I think it was 130 in that game, and then chased it down. It was a situation tailor-made for Davies Malan. He scored sort of 60 off 40 odd balls. Never really had to extend himself.
Yeah.
I don't think the toss is particularly crucial tomorrow. I think we're 30 games into the tournament now. I think teams have a pretty good idea of what a pass score is. I think the pitches don't necessarily deteriorate. Should be a dry day in London tomorrow, so I don't think weather's going to play an impact. So I think the main thing is that the Brave. We know the Brave like to chase. We know that's Mahela Jaywarden's preferred strategy: bowl first, restrict the opposition, condense the game. Then use your batters to control the chase. So I think that the Brave will prepare to chase, but I don't think the toss is going to be that crucial.
Yeah, and I mean, Shai follows up on the Mahela Jaywarden a bit there. What's his influence been on that team? Well, I think it's been huge. The experience of coaching in the IPL has been shared between a number of the coaches. But, he's a winning coach in the IPL. It makes a big difference. And I think, the way that team has come into form so clearly as the tournament has progressed, I think that's his influence, right? Yeah,
he was a very thoughtful cricketer. Both when he was a batter and Sri Lankan captain, and his career was just sort of coming towards tailing off as franchise cricket came in. I remember thinking, from his style, Jayawardene is not suited to 2020 cricket. Yet he was effective in it because he worked out how to tailor his game to. He wasn't a power hitter, but he could nudge, he could deflect, he could put the ball into the gaps. And I think he sort of takes that thinking approach to his coaching in the way that the Southern Braves sort of go about it. They're very clever. They run harder than almost any other team. That's one of the things I really noticed about them. Yeah. And another thing that's helped out is the fact that his contacts book, because when David Warner couldn't come into play, who else but Mumbai Indians Quinton de Kock turns up instead. So that sort of a address book, obviously, or who he had in his phone at the time, was very handy.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'd also like to point out the point you made earlier, which is that of the Aussie coaches, not so much success, right? We shouldn't laugh. But
I think it goes to show, though, doesn't it? I mean, you've got 4 Aussie coaches: Darren Lehman, Simon Katich, Tom Moody, Shane Warne. I mean, Warne's not even really a coach. He was involved that first year of the IPL, but hasn't done an awful lot since.
Yeah.
And, the London Spirit have been pretty disappointing, very disappointing, just the one win. So maybe it does go to show that sometimes you should invest in a winning coach, and you see that in the women's competition as well, with Charlotte Edwards being by far and most the effective.
Yeah, I think so. And let's flick back to the women's comp for a while. So Kundala Saikaran asks, is everyone available for overall Invincibles women? I believe so. I mean, they have had a stable squad throughout, and that's perhaps a strength of the squad that they've picked. Less, some injury affecting Shabnam Ismail, but I am expecting that squad to be at full strength. So you're going to have a bowling lineup that, Maddie Villiers, Shabnam Ismail steaming in again, and having a full effect. Have you noticed any other injuries popping up on the radar that you're concerned about on either side?
No, I haven't seen anything on it. Obviously, we know that Shafali Verma won't be involved for the Phoenix. I think that Izzy Wong will be playing. She did miss a couple of games through injury, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that she won't be playing.
Yeah, got a smart new haircut, I think.
Yeah, apparently, according to Kate Koss, she looks like a disused tennis ball, which I thought was a bit unfair. But
well, all of social media has now got them rubbing her head for love. So maybe it's working. They won the last game.
I think just that sort of one thing that they could do a little bit better next season on the 100 is in terms of the team preview stuff. We don't necessarily get a lot of injury news before the games, so as far as we know, everyone's available. But it's something they could certainly do a bit better next season.
Well, I think you should claim a small victory, Rich, in improving the competition, in that you got on to the England and Wales Cricket Board administrators as soon as the first game was on, saying, why aren't you releasing the correct squad numbers so that you can actually, when you're watching the game, see who is in what shirt and then identify who's who? Is that you? I think it was you.
Well, maybe I wasn't the only one to complain, but I did drop it next to the ECB because I think I had the teams listed 1 to 11. I said, well, what does 1 to 11 mean? Give us the squad numbers. Because watching that first game and not knowing a lot of the players at the first women's game, you could see the numbers on the back of the shirt. You can't read the name on the back of the shirt from 50 meters away. So they started doing that. So now we're familiar with all the squad numbers.
Yeah. Another comment in here from Shai. Asking us to pick one player of the tournament for both the men and the women and an emerging player. So I'll give you a moment to think about that. My player of the tournament for the men is going to be the player of the tournament I identified before the tournament began, and it's the least controversial choice ever in Rashid Khan. Now, I don't think he's necessarily been the star of the tournament, but I think I want to recognise what he has done for the tournament in terms of bowling well, 12 wickets, joint top wickets taker with Adil Rashid, but also the fielding aspect, the power hitting, and the enthusiasm he has shown for this format and visibly enthusing, young fans getting involved, just showing everything I think this tournament will become in coming years. So he's my man of the tournament so far.
I'll give you a woman of the tournament, and I will go for Sophia Dunkley of the Southern Brave. A very impressive team, but I think she just gives them so much coming in at 3 or 4 because she's a genuine power hitter, but she's got class as well. So she can find gaps if she's in earlier in the power play, or she can go over the top if needed. And she just seems to have a fantastic, cricketing brain in terms of, judging run chases. With that team, when they've had Mandana and Wyatt getting them off to the flyer at the top of the order, that always sets them up, but it hasn't always sort of come off. But, Dunkley's just been there in the middle order, incredibly effective, and a key player in the best team.
Yeah, and I just see Kundula Saikaran has just jumped in with the question there. Could Mandana leaving put more pressure on Wyatt, and why is Wellington difficult to get away? But I wanted to name Amanda Jane Wellington as the women's player of the tournament for me because her bowling has been sensational. I often think I'm very batter centric. I've gone for 2 bowlers somehow. I mean, how do you think about that comment? Is it going to put too much pressure on Wyatt?
Any team that misses out on the player of the quality of Smriti Mandana is going to feel that a little bit. Maybe it does put a little bit. They brought in this the Irish opener, struggle for a surname a second, who looked reasonable in the last game as well. So they brought in a good replacement for her, much as the men's team brought in Paul Sterling. So I think they've got a decent replacement, but obviously not going to be as good as Mandana. But I think the middle order is so good of that team. Stefani Taylor, we just talked about that, how good Dunkley is. Then you've got Maya Boucher's played really well. Yeah. Shrubsole's smashed it when she's needed to. Amanda Jane Wellington can bat. So it's just throughout the lineup that they can hurt you.
And on the reason why Wellington's so hard to get away, I think it's just a really smart bowler, a really experienced and smart bowler with variations and the ability to change the line at the last moment without giving too much away for the battle. I think that's been, as I say, my women's player of the tournament. So if we go back to the original question, you owe me a men's player of the tournament, and we'll do the emerging.
I'm going to agree with AEW for life on this one. Liam Livingston. Sometimes the obvious answer is the correct answer. Over 300 runs in the tournament. It's easy to say now, he's the obvious choice for the best player, but he really has delivered. I think for the tournament to work, it needed for the English white ball stars to be prominent. He's picked up the captaincy after Mo and Ali departed for the Test team. They haven't missed a beat. They've been carrying on exactly the same way. He's even bowled some useful spells as well, and I think he's so far ahead in terms of sixes. I think he has over 20 sixes, and then the second person is 12. So just tremendous power hitting. He's been absolutely the most valuable player for me. Yeah.
Okay, and let's have a go at the emerging players. I'll do mine as a pair then. So I will go for Will Smead from Birmingham Phoenix for the emerging batter from the men's game. Clearly, I have a Somerset bias, but he's bagged loads of runs in being an important cog in what has just been a terrifying top order. And an emerging player on the women's side, I'm torn. I'm torn between Lauren Bell, who we had that fantastic chat with on the channel, but also Alice Capsey from the Oval Invincibles. I'm going to go with Bell though. I think whilst she admitted herself that she has some inconsistency in her delivery, what we've seen from her is genuine wicket taking, and there's no replacement for it in short form cricket.
Yeah, I think that's right. If I was going to go for a player in the women's game, aside from Lauren Bell, who I might have gone for as well, I might go for Danny Gibson actually in the London Spirits, who started off coming in 8 or 9, has subsequently come in higher and higher up the order with each.
Had a great game yesterday.
Had a great game yesterday. I mean, they should have opened with her. I mean, she was the only one who was really giving it a smash. But her strike rate has been phenomenal through the tournament. Good clean hitting, bowls decent medium pace as well. So I think she's been for a sort of non-England player, she's been a fantastic find. On the guys' side, I mean, again, is it an obvious answer if I go for Chris Benjamin? But it's just such a great story. The guy was playing second 11 cricket 6 weeks ago, and now he's going to be starring for his team at Lords on Saturday.
Is that because you've had a chat to him today?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great story, and is again maybe playing like the same way I can have Rashid Khan because of the narratives and the stuff around that. Maybe there's something there, this reward for effort and youngster coming through and all that. We love that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that's what you want, right? And I've said it before. It's a new tournament. Everybody knows the teams are made up. The teams have been created. But the players playing for them and the cities they're playing in and the fans watching are not. So seeing these people and their stories and like their passion for cricket and how they've got to that point and how they're entertaining us, night after night, that's all real. And I think that when we see the young players coming through who weren't necessarily household names, but people are talking about them, there's people who are talking about them who aren't necessarily kind of day-to-day cricket fans. I think that's amazing for the sport.
Yeah. So we could go to a slightly broader question now, or do you want to do some reviews? A broader question. Should we do Shai's question then?
Yeah.
So, which of the areas should the 100 tournament improve? Here's a big question for you. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. And I think there's scope to do it in the men's competition. I think we've missed out on having the truly best players because of COVID. I think we probably need to prioritize getting a few more of the top grade 8 overseas stars. And I think we need to think carefully about how we schedule it in terms of so that the England players can be involved, but also sort of doesn't damage the red ball schedule. So I think that's a tricky one, but I think something we definitely need to think about more next summer. And I think. Yeah, in terms of communication, in terms of around the teams, the teams don't tend to have their own websites. Everything through the100.com. You don't necessarily hear all the injury news or the team previews. I think they could do a better job of sort of giving us cricket fans a little bit more kind of news around the teams.
That's where we come in, right, Rich?
Yeah, exactly. We're filling the niche, but it shouldn't be just up to us.
Well, we're doing our best. I mean, I'll agree with most of that, and particularly scheduling. I've mentioned it before, but I'd like to add, I'd like to see them just do a little more in terms of family atmosphere at the games. And I think there was so much promise about the family areas. It's largely worked. It's been better than some of the, the drinking culture stuff, but I think they could just tighten that up, have the family atmosphere protected, because ultimately they're the audience I want to see at the cricket.
Yeah.
As your family atmosphere invades this live broadcast. That's good.
That's what it's all about.
Let's get back to this weekend. And a question here from Kandula Saikaran. What to expect from the Lord's pitch? Well, I know fewer people better qualified to talk about a Lord's pitch than yourself, Rich, through your extensive connections there. So talk to us. What's it going to be?
Oh, well, I did have last time I was at Lord's, I had a chat with one of the groundsmen who I know from 20 years ago when I used to work at the ground. I expect that it will be a relatively good wicket. I think it will be a large outfield. I think they'll basically use the whole playing area for it. I think there'll be a bit of a sort of cloud around in the day. So there might be a little bit of grass, but I think it will be a pretty good, true Lord's wicket. And I think we've seen that in the games. I mean, the Northern Superchargers had no problems at all batting on that early in the tournament against the Spirit.
Do you expect them to take a pitch right in the centre, or do you expect there to be a short side?
Central pitch. I think we've already had the test, so I see no reason why they wouldn't use that. They might even use the test wicket.
Well, I'd hope they'd have a fresh pitch. I mean, it is Lord's after all.
Yeah, no, it will be a fresh wicket. Don't worry.
And the same for the Oval tomorrow, of course, for the Eliminators. We're at both games, so I hope we'll be able to pump some stuff out on Instagram, on Twitter as well, probably, just to keep that up. And maybe I think Ollie is offering maybe to give us a bit of a show tomorrow night, so we can maybe dial into that.
All your comments about good behaviour are going to go out the window when it's you in the crowd.
I don't know what you mean. How dare you? Okay. Here's an interesting question from Shai. What is our opinion on the number one team going to the finals directly? And indeed, I suppose you could expand that slightly. How do you think the sort of the table process has worked? Has that been fair for you?
I like it. I think that a tournament where there's 8 teams in the top 4 all qualified for the semi-finals feels a bit too top heavy for me. And I like the idea that you're rewarded for winning the league. You get that place directly in the final, and then you have the eliminators. So I think 3 teams qualifying out of 8 gets it about right. And I think we've seen that really, because with the exception of the Spirit Fire men last night, which still ended up being a good game, every game's had something riding on it in this last week, which I think has been good. There's been that was the only sort of genuine dead rubber. So I think that the tournament as it's set up actually works for me. The one quibble I'd have, perhaps as a Spirit fan, is maybe when teams do finish level on points, perhaps it should go to the head-to-head. I think in terms of the team that won out those 2 games should be ranked higher. But other than that, I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, and I suppose you're saying that for the women's side, where they would have gone through. They put in a great effort against the Welsh Fire. I think they needed to bowl the Welsh Fire women out in 41 balls, and I think they managed. Sorry, they needed to knock off the total in 41 balls, and I think they managed in 58 or something like that. So not too far off.
They weren't too shabby. They gave it a good go, but it was always going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I don't mind the system. My query will be the fact that we've got the eliminators on a Friday and then the final on a Saturday, and whether there's any effect. I don't expect top cricket players necessarily to be too tired from a short format game like this, but whether there's an effect or an unfairness in that sort of consecutive days of cricket.
Well, I guess, that's the accusation you can make about T20 finals day, in that there's always that advantage for the team that plays first or second. I don't think it's a huge issue. I think the one thing that think about in terms of going forward as a tournament, and there's these teams become more embedded in their cities. And we've seen that throughout the tournament. There's been tremendous home support, for the Phoenix, for the Superchargers, for the original. Actually, all teams have had fantastic home support. But, what happens if you've loved the tournament and you're a Birmingham Phoenix fan? You're like, oh, we're in the final. Oh, I've got 3 days to get there. And how do I get a ticket? And I've got to get down to London and stay over all that cost. Yeah. So you think, okay, well, as the tournament progresses, we need to find out some way to make sure that teams of the fans who make it to the final can get to the final. I know that's going to be tricky, and I don't know whether you make it so that if you buy a season ticket at Edgbaston and the Phoenix make it, then you have the automatic option on a ticket. Who knows? In this day and age of mobile ticketing, maybe it's possible. But I think that's one thing they could think about. Yeah,
maybe. At the same time, there is a joy to the tournament, and there's cricket every day.
Yeah.
A double header every day pretty much throughout, and the weekends had a double, as it were. But that was a healthy way of keeping up the momentum. And as you say, with very few dead rubbers played, kept it going. And I think in terms of TV figures, some of the Monday night figures were just as impressive as stuff over the weekend.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. And another question here from Kandala. And if you're new to the channel as well, please just throw a question in. We'd happily have a look at it. We are all about having a chat about cricket. His question is, who's going to play in place of Shafali Verma? And is there any power hitter who can tonk? I like that word. I love that top word. Who can tonk it and make use of the power play in a similar way to Shafali. This is for the Birmingham Phoenix, of course. Who can do that job?
So I think they will bump Amy Jones up. I think they'll open the batting with Amy Jones. I think that will be their strategy. So I think the Joneses, Amy and Eve Jones, will open the batting. I think they'll sort of shuffle the batters up one. So you'll see, Katie Mack coming in a bit earlier, Erin Burns in the middle order, and we might even see sort of Izzy Wong coming in a bit higher up as well. Somebody who can give the ball a good whack, a tonk, as it were, and Emily Arlott, who batted very well the other day in that victory with when Erin Burns played really well when they beat the Originals. So I think that Eve Jones will be Amy Jones will go up to open alongside Eve Jones. In terms of who they bring in, I'm not sure who the replacement will be, but it will probably be an all-rounder somewhere in the middle order, I thought, rather than a specialist up top, because you go with your better batters, right? And if you haven't been making the team, you're not going to be parachuted directly in as an opener, are you?
No, and there's form for the two Joneses as well. So I would agree with that logic. That makes sense to me. Okay, so I mean, we've had a decent walk around the weekend's activity that's coming. Is there anything over the last round of matches that particularly caught your eye, rather than going through them all individually?
So I thought the Brave Invincible game was an interesting one on Monday night, because it was that tense knockout game. The Brave did their usual thing of putting the squeeze on. It was a good knock by Alex Blake, I felt, to get them up to something respectable. But then when it came to the chase, one player that I've been really impressed by, and he doesn't really come under the player of the tournament or an emerging player, but Alex Davies of Lancashire and the Southern Brave, very experienced county player. He sort of epitomises kind of the Jai Ordner style for me, because they put him in at 4. He can hit, but really his game is to put a tremendous pressure on the opposition. He must be one of the quickest runners between the wickets I've seen. And he was scurrying up and down. He hit 40 in that run chase. Colin de Grantham, who hasn't had the best tournament as well, he makes 40 at the other end. He's almost the absolute opposite, and sort of this tall, big hitter. But he was running the twos fast as well with Davies. And I thought the way that they just put loads of pressure on the oval to chase that target down was really impressive on Monday night. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that they'll make it to the final tomorrow. Yeah,
and Colin de Granham's dropped out, I think, from the weekend's activity alongside Phil Allen because of Kiwi commitments.
Yeah, that's right. They've had to disappear off because New Zealand, I think, are touring Bangladesh, and they were involved in that. So they'll be missing out there.
Yeah, so the Birmingham Phoenix have certainly brought in the Singaporean, actually, isn't it? No, someone's bringing in Tim David, haven't they? Who's the Singaporean?
Yeah.
I forget who. And Birmingham Phoenix have brought in Bedingham. Is it right?
Yes, that'd be the Brave. But I wouldn't expect either to play, right? I think they'll just be in the squad.
No,
I would have thought the Phoenix would promote Miles Hammond up to open with Will Smead, and potentially bring Daniel Bell Drummond into the middle order.
Absolutely. So that's there will be some tweaks, but I don't think we're going to see any sort of breakout first timers necessarily on the weekend. But I'll be proved wrong again, no doubt.
I have to. You asked me about the round. We have to give a shout out to Glenn Phillips.
The Welsh Fire. You've just stolen my thunder. I was just about to do that myself.
Go on,
the
tell us
Welsh Fire
about
game.
That's lyrical.
It was marvellous, because the Welsh Fire, bless us, 2 wins in the first 2 games, all on track, looking great. Johnny Bairstow, get your test call up, but and then nothing. Just absolutely a tough 5 games. But last night, I think I really impressed by what I saw and the fighting spirit of the Welsh Fire. Glenn Phillips personified it with an absolutely blockbuster innings to keep them in that game. Qais Ahmed, along with all the Afghans, we must only speculate, I guess, but must have a lot on their minds at the moment, putting in the winning runs and bowling well. And, I think there's promise for that team next year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if they can get Bairstow back regularly, then obviously he's a huge addition to it. I mean, you could almost argue he's the MVP, right? Because you take him out and you see what a loss. So he is the most valuable player.
Well, do you know who the two players are with the highest average in the men's game this tournament?
Well, I know the other one. The other one is Zach Crawley.
Yeah, so both him. So Zach Crawley, 1 innings, 64. Johnny Bairstow, average 64 off 2 innings. There you go. Right. Liam Livingston averaging over 60 himself, though. So we'll probably give it to Liam.
I think the London spirit is back to the drawing board. You had the brain trust of Warne and Morgan, but it didn't amount to much in the end. And when you saw the bowling lineup for the last game, Blake Cullen, youngster, Brad Wheel, unproven youngster, Jade Byrne back at 35 after a couple of years, out of it with injury. You thought at the beginning of the tournament we were going to have Mark Wood and Mohamed Amir steaming in. That didn't quite work out, but like I said, I've got hope. I think that the prospect of playing 4 home games at Lords could entice some quality players. So maybe there's hope for the Spirit next year after a clear out. Yeah,
well, like it or lump it, Shane Warne is back next year. He's been interviewed today saying he can't wait. And I think they've got some work to do on the men's squad. The women's squad really did pick up, though. And I think that one with Tammy Beaumont and Heather Knight, you'd hope would really be in the mix for the Eliminator next year. So I think we've got one final question then, Rich, before I let you go. Will we be live streaming after the 100 final? You tell me, Rich. What are we doing?
Well, we'll be there. So I suppose it depends, doesn't it, on what the 5G is like around Lord's Cricket Ground, whether they'll let us into the media centre or not.
So I think it's going to be tough for us to do that after the final itself. But I would like to get us online again next week, over the weekend, maybe Sunday, see how we're doing. And I think we need to have a wrap-up show. We need to be talking about our MVPs properly, who took the best catch, all of that stuff we did in the prediction show. Maybe just showing how badly wrong we got it on that prediction show, but also just talking about some of this stuff again. So yeah, Shai will be back. And we also need to have a big conversation about where this channel goes next, right?
Yeah, and we'd like to involve you guys in that conversation too, because we're blown away by the amount of support we've got over the last month, and the amount of people who've been watching the videos and subscribing, and the people turning up to these live streams as well. There's a lot of short format cricket going on around the world, and maybe it doesn't. A lot of people enjoy it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there talking about the tests, etc., which we love as well, but. Maybe there is scope. We've got a big World Cup coming up. We've got the rest of the IPL. We've got the CPL coming up, and we watch a lot of it. So maybe we'll keep going. But we're really interested to hear your thoughts on what we can do with the channel going forward as part of the community.
Yeah, Kadula Psycho and asking why we don't join Commentary Box. I don't know if that's an app or something like that, but I'm going to take it as Test Match Special. Yeah, so here's my appeal. I'd like a job with Test Match Special.
I think you need 100 caps for England to get anywhere near the Commentary Box, don't you?
Maybe.
which we're not going to get at this point.
I should probably start with Somerset Local Radio or something like that. But yeah, I think we'll be back in some form. Keep it posted, and if you've enjoyed the content, hey, just let us know. We're really, really enjoying being here. So give us a like, a subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Any final thoughts, Rich?
Yeah, we've been really privileged doing these live shows, but we've also had a great opportunity to talk to some cricketers through the tournament. So I think back through like Stephen Mullaney, Adam Milne, Chris Benjamin, who comes out tomorrow, but then the likes of like Lauren Bell and Georgia Hennessy. I'm missing out a few out here. Brandon Glover, who's going to be playing in the T20 World Cup for the Netherlands. Extremely exciting. So if you haven't seen those interviews, go back and have a look, because those were tremendous fun to do and gave a real insight into what it's like being a professional cricketer in these tournaments. And if you do like this and you think this is interesting watching, then please tell people. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already. But pass the word that this channel's out there, and
we should give an honourable mention. We should give an honourable mention to actually two people I'd like to get back on next week as well. It's Dan Weston from the Birmingham Phoenix, to talk about how that tournament went from the analyst, from behind the scenes kind of point of view, and also Pulami from the women's game.
171 not out.
171 Not Out podcast and the analyst and stats side there. I think we'd really like to get her back on next week. Go on then. I'll give you one more question. Kandula Saikaran, you've asked the correct question to close us out. Trophy winners, please.
Phoenix men, and in the women, going to be like Owen Morgan, predict the Superchargers are going to win it. It was the other night, wasn't it? Even though they've been eliminated. It's like, glad you've been paying attention, Owen. I suppose let's go for an upset. Let's go for a Phoenix double. Birmingham Phoenix double for me.
Like it. I'm going for an upset in the men's tournament. I'm going Trent Rockets. And I'm going Southern Brave in the women's because they're better than everyone else. But there you go. Okay, Rich, it's been a pleasure. Guys, girls, thank you so much for joining us here on the 100 Club. It's been a real pleasure. We will catch you real soon. There'll be some stuff coming out over the weekend, so catch you.
Enjoy the last 4 games.
Absolutely, will do, and I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.